جسر الحبيب القمر ملبوس الجدال على عيونه ما شولاي جسر الحبيب القمر ملبوس الجدال.
Thank you. So, we're giving you a little taste of what's to come. We're going to take a little moment here, and Cameron's going to talk to you. I'm not sure what he's going to say.
I would like to celebrate a little bit with you all the fact that our music schools, which we planted the seeds for in Syria and Jordan, are opening up. We have 6 musicians that are from Iraq in Jordan and 6 musicians that are from Iraq in Syria, and we have Iraqi administrators in both countries. You may not be aware of it, but by their own count, the Iraqis have 4 million refugees now in Syria and 4 million in Jordan. So that's a lot of people that have been displaced by the American invasion and subsequent disturbances. And we feel that it is cause to celebrate the fact that we did succeed in transmitting the idea that American people could contribute something to support livelihood for Iraqi refugees, at least because we're musicians. We can channel funding through musical circles, and we can support Iraqi musicians who are currently in Syria and Iraqi musicians who are currently in Jordan to teach Iraqi music to young Iraqi children who are currently part of that displaced population. And someday those Iraqi musicians and families hopefully will be able to move back home into Iraq, and then they will be able to carry the schools back with them also, and we'll be able to continue to support this effort to honor Iraqi culture. You know, people who sing and dance as part of their everyday lives, which people in the Middle East certainly do, have thousands of years of the legacy of ancient wisdom at their fingertips through this music that we're seeking to make certain that it stays alive and well. This business of supporting the music actually supports the legacy of wisdom that goes way back in Mesopotamia. Think Hammurabi's Code, 1600 BC. Think many other early egalitarian systems that gave birth in many ways later to what happened in Greece and what happened in India and what happened in Europe and other parts of the world. You know, we were taught in grade school that the Tigris, Euphrates river valleys are the cradle of civilization, and the more we travel and we discover the truth of that, the more in awe we are to have in some ways stumbled into this position of being able to support that. I have to say that it was by pure serendipitous chance that I had Iraqi musician friends living in Denver back in the mid-1970s that began teaching me Iraqi music at that time. You know, life for human beings all over planet Earth is not always so easy. We all have had our share of having to live through invasions that have come from other parts, and we haven't understood exactly who our new rulers and landlords might happen to be. In the case of the Middle East, if studying its history leads to any real in-depth understanding, then it seems clear that the last time the people who lived in those parts of Mesopotamia and the Eastern Mediterranean actually had what we might call a government of their own was about 800 years ago, during Salah ad-Din's period of rule. He was famous, of course, for driving the Crusaders back up into Europe, but being very benign to them in the process and not following through with the expected usual bloodshed that can happen when empires change. Salah ad-Din became known even in Europe as a generous, noble soul. But that was 800 years ago, and that was the last time that the people in the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley really enjoyed autonomy in their own self-rule, because shortly after that the Mongols arrived. And then shortly after that, also from northern Asia, the Turkish people arrived. And shortly after that, there were mixtures of Portuguese and Dutch and French and British and now the Americans that all seem to have the upper economic and military hands, and they actually have planted the controlling governments throughout that region in one way or another, I would have to say, for the last 800 years. Nevertheless, when you look at places like Baghdad and Damascus, which have been continually inhabited by indigenous people for the last 5,000 years at least, the last 800 years is just recent history. So one thing that we learn when we travel there is that part of the ancient wisdom that's transmitted in this music is an honoring of multicultural diversity. In other words, when we go to Damascus or Haleb, Aleppo in Syria, where we just were in May and June, we're still surrounded by the people who speak Armenian and the Aramaic speakers. In Malula in Syria, we were just in that village where Aramaic, the language that was the lingua franca of the whole Middle East 2,000 years ago, is still spoken today in Malula. And there is an Armenian village on the Mediterranean coast, and there are many Arab tribes, both Sunni and Shia, and there are Turkish tribes, there are Kurdish tribes, and there are Iranian, Persian people. You know, when we were in Saida Zainab, which is the most well-populated part south of Damascus for Iraqi refugees, and I say there's supposedly 4 million of them now, and many Palestinian refugee camps as well. We were surrounded by people who spoke the languages of Central Asia, the languages of Indo-European heritage. I won't try and explain the complex linguistic roots of all of this right now, but it's very complex, and it's one of the places in the world where there is a matrix of tribes who have lived there for thousands of years and who know their own strong points. And in some sense, they don't really need a government to be able to manifest their contribution. The Hebrew speakers, then we have many Jewish friends in Syria who never left and never went to Israel, who still live in Damascus and in Aleppo. They know what the strength of their culture is and how it can contribute to the ancient matrix that is still alive and well in the Middle East. From our point of view as musicians who seem to be welcome to work from the grassroots level on the streets on up, we feel that the power of this matrix of ancient tribal complexity to manifest in healthy ways is really truly endless, and we're waiting for the day when the more recent governments that have been imposed by people from far away during this last 800 years relax a little bit and let let the ancient wisdom shine back through. I'm using the word matrix. We were recently invited by people here in Boulder who focus on this term, the matrix, and how different individuals in a matrix don't really need a leader in order to know how to manifest their strong points in a group. And I would like to suggest that that model works beautifully on an indigenous tribal level all over planet Earth. And I'd like to welcome Amina and a lot of the Matrix folks here tonight. Yes, thank you for coming. And I'd like to, of course, re-welcome our Iraqi refugee friends and all the rest of you, whether you're here because you're, you know our music, or whether you're here because you're curious about something cross-cultural. Welcome. Thank you very much, and we'll get on with the music.